Every memory came back to me at once, and suddenly all was clear in my mind. I raised my head and saw a black dog approaching. The dog became iridescent. An intense light radiated from its body.
Interpreting Castaneda's vision the next day, Don Juan explained that the dog he had seen was in fact the spirit of the peyote plant. The spirit had never appeared to a Western man in this way before. Don Juan saw it as an omen that Castaneda had been chosen to become his apprentice. Castaneda accepted the challenge, and in doing so, he took anthropological research to a whole new extreme.
Castaneda went native. He went and apprenticed himself to a religious practitioner and followed relatively exclusively the training under that single individual. Most anthropologists don't take that in-depth approach to studying one very narrow aspect of the culture.
Carlos Castaneda, in a sense, created an academic transgression by breaking the boundaries between the observer and the participant. In social science, you are not supposed to do that. You are supposed to simply observe, be a witness, write about something, and then leave.
Castaneda dedicated the next 4 years of his life to his apprenticeship with Don Juan, but his personal life suffered as a result.
He told me that he had met a man that was a sorcerer, Don Juan, and he said that he was going to spend a lot of time with him, and he left me when he came back, and he just wasn't the same that he had been before.
He sacrificed having a normal life with my mother, and he said it was the saddest day of his life. But my father had an unbending intent, and his intent was to, at the time, to get what he needed for his thesis, and then it evolved into much more.
First you get ginseng seed.
One of the shaman's greatest skills was divination, the ability to foretell the future and reveal secrets hidden in the past. The plant used for divination was ginseng weed. Its seeds could be crushed and made into a potion. Like peyote, ginseng weed was thought to contain a powerful spirit.
Ginseng weed is a very powerful substance, very dangerous. It produces deaths every year in the United States. Like the hallucinogens, it can produce visionary experiences, but it can also have a lot of toxic effects on the body.
Castaneda claimed that in his trance, he saw that a close friend was on the verge of mental collapse. Another vision helped him to identify the person responsible for a series of crimes at his university.
After this vision, this person was caught at the UCLA library and sentenced to prison and made to pay an enormous fine for having done this.
In the course of his apprenticeship, Castaneda became more and more versed in the effects of the plants used in shamanic rituals.
The plants were basically designed to break down his defenses, break down his worldview, sort of stop his descriptions of reality in order to allow him to perceive the world in a different way.
Under the influence of hallucinogenic mushrooms, Castaneda even came to believe he could fly.
The momentum carried me forward, and from there I soared. I saw the dark mass of the mountains. My speed was extraordinary. I enjoyed such freedom and swiftness as I had never known before.
He said he turned into a crow one time. Did you read that? And I never see a crow fly over that I don't talk to it and call it Carlos.
"1965 marked a turning point for Castaneda. He began to see visions and spirits without the use of hallucinogens, and accepted Don Juan's explanation that these were glimpses of other realities that existed alongside our own. For the first time, he truly saw the world through Native American eyes. But the 4-year apprenticeship was beginning to take its toll. Castaneda became increasingly disorientated as the line between one reality and another became blurred. He began to fear he was losing his reason.
He's terrified. He's absolutely terrified. He's so devastated and so shaken by this that he knows that is the end of the 4 to 5 year apprenticeship that he describes in the teachings of Don Juan.
To save his sanity, Castaneda returned to California and set about writing up his thesis. At the time, he had no idea of its potential.
One time, he pulled out this dirty, rat-chewed manuscript and said, "Here, would you read this piece of shit?"
But then, Castaneda's thesis was picked up by the University of California Press and published in 1968.
I just was amazed. I never thought that Carlos would get that book published. And from then on, there was no limit to what happened.
The timing of the book couldn't have been better. A generation in the midst of conflict tuned into Castaneda's idea that an alternative, better reality could be accessed by following Don Juan's teachings.
I think the reason why the book became so famous was because, spurred by the Vietnam War, a lot of people really embraced anti-establishment position and went after drugs to give them pleasure. And I think Carlos's book gave some scientific validation to their pleasure seeking.
Key to his contributions was the notion that our ordinary reality was not the real reality, but rather something that we had learned to perceive as members of our culture. And while this notion is customary in anthropology, he took it to an extreme, suggesting that there are totally different realities that can be experienced if one applies awareness and intention.
The teachings of Don Juan sold 16,000 copies a week, and Castaneda received the ultimate accolade, a place on the front cover of Time magazine.
Carlos was so popular. Once his books came out, he became the most popular guru in the country. Everybody wanted his writings. He became rich and famous. That made him a millionaire. His first book.
When his publishers pressed him for more books, Castaneda decided to return to Mexico to continue his research with Don Juan. 2 new books soon followed. Within anthropology, Castaneda's extreme method inspired a new generation of students like Jay Fykes.
He was a participant, so I thought, wow, that's the way that we should do things, is we should try to participate in the rituals if we want to learn something.
Fykes decided to follow in Castaneda's footsteps.
The next summer, I decided I would go to Mexico and try to find someone who could give me the sacred mushrooms that Castaneda wrote about. So I went down to Oaxaca and found an Indian village and found an old lady that sold me the mushrooms. And I had this feeling I was flying, just going right up into heaven. It was a great feeling. So I had these very extraordinary experiences that made me think that Castaneda must be right.
Fykes decided to study a similar Mexican tribe called the Huichol. They were well known for using the cactus peyote. And like Castaneda, a shaman decided to take him under his wing.
I impressed a Huichol shaman enough because he said, well, what did you see? What did you experience? And I told him. And he said, yeah, that's what this means. And so then he decided that he would help me. I proved myself, and then I was accepted. So again, that just affirmed that Castaneda must have been on the right track.